Hello and welcome. You're listening to our podcast, Ayahuasca Assisted Therapy. Learn all you need to know about the safe, ethical, and responsible use of ayahuasca for healing and awakening. Meet the wisdom keepers, space holders, and guardians of this powerful plant ally. Hear directly from the people about their ayahuasca healing experience. To embark on your healing journey or to start a new career in psychedelic assisted therapy, go to my website, avatarhealingarts.com, and get in touch with me. Thank you for liking, subscribing, and sharing this video. Please leave a comment and enjoy this episode. Hello and welcome back to our podcast about ayahuasca assisted therapy. And I'm back here with Alex. And today I'm super excited because we're going to share with you guys the best integration practices for ayahuasca integration primarily, but also any plant medicine integration, any plant medicine or sacred plant you're working with. I think you can apply, the same kind of principles. So we're going to share with you our 5 best practices, based on our experience in this field for many, many years. And also we're going to share with you some traps and pitfalls that you can avoid to make your journey more enjoyable. We'll see how much we can cram into this episode. We might do another one. So welcome back, Alex. Good to have you here.
Thank you, Nina. Nice to be back. Great to see you.
Let's start with why do you think, that this topic is so important, for people to hear about?
I think because a lot of people struggle with integration. They may have wonderful experiences during the ceremonies, during the retreat, during the weekend, but then they go home and go back to the same circumstances that they live in, and that discordance can be really tough to navigate. And then also things have changed for them internally, but their life hasn't changed yet. And so that can create friction. And so I think especially people doing deep, intensive work with plant medicines, it can actually create turbulence if they're not working to integrate the experiences, the lessons, the healings into their life.
Yeah, so very true. And that so nicely fits into my first favorite practice, which is have a guide. Have an integration guide. If you've never done this before, guys, have an integration guide. That's the best thing that you can do to yourself. Think about it that way, that if you go on a journey, or if you go on holiday to a foreign country, you research, you prepare, you have a map, you Google map probably, you have a GPS, you have guides, if you are going on a particular tour. And it's not that you cannot do it alone, but definitely it's more kind of trial and error experience. And as Alex said, oftentimes the experiences can be very challenging, when people can give up on themselves or their journey because simply they don't have the tools or the resources at the moment to face and process, what is happening with them. So I think, the most important, if this is your first time and if you are doing a deep dive and you really want to uproot something in your life and deeply change, then definitely I would say, work with an integration guide who has familiar with this journey and has enough experience and tools and expertise to hold space for you. What do you think, Alex?
I think that makes a lot of sense, especially for people who are doing deep healing work. It would be like doing deep healing work without a therapist or a healer or someone that you're working with that's helping you to do that. It's much harder to do it on your own, and you can kind of, like you said, learn by trial and error versus get the experience of people who have done this for many, many years and who know the terrain, know how to deal with the challenges, and kind of know what to avoid. Especially in these psychedelic states where it can get confusing. Sometimes people get messages or they have visions that don't make sense to them, or are surprising or confusing, or may upset their understanding of themselves or their lives or their world. And trying to figure that out on your own can be really tough, and there can be it can create more confusion. Actually, you can get lost in that.
Yes, and I would like to share an example with people that, personally happened to me, but also numerous people I work with over the years is, specific, I think, to the ayahuasca, but probably other plants can do this too, is to bring up memories, especially early memories from your childhood that were suppressed into amnesia. These memories were suppressed for a reason. So these are normally very traumatic memories that we are talking about. And I personally went through this experience, and how it feels, when you are in it, is that everything you thought about yourself in your life is changed. The whole context, like everything is now suddenly shifted in the light of this new information that you ever believed, that you ever thought about yourself, your family, the dynamic, your understanding. And that is, as Alex said, as is very disturbing and can be very, very scary, because it's kind of like, feeling like somebody ripping the carpet out under your feet, and everything is just kind of falling apart, around you and within you. So these are the type of experiences we're talking about that can happen, not necessarily will happen to everybody, but can happen. And it's really hard to navigate, even if you have support. It's intense experience, but if you don't have support, then this can be potentially, re-traumatizing you in a way, what's happening. So is there any example that you want to bring or you want to share, Alex, regarding this topic?
I mean, I've had many experiences with participants and clients who things they had forgotten came up that turned out to be really have had, that had a profound effect on them, like in childhood or even young adulthood. Sometimes things that happened to them, but also things that they did that they now they had avoided or repressed or had forgotten about, and then that came up, and then realizing that they had maybe some actions they'd taken that they felt tremendous guilt or shame over, and what to do with that. It's easy to go into a very dark place when you are kind of seeing and acknowledging something that you've done. It's different than something that's been done to you, but that's part of taking responsibility and accepting and learning to love yourself. Includes loving the parts of you that made some mistakes and things that you now know better. So I've seen that many times. Yes, and those are usually situations where people really need a lot of support.
That's so good that you mentioned that, because that is so true. Like the one type of experience is more bringing us into that victim state, and that, look what happened to me, and the other one is bringing us into the role of the perpetrator, and look what I've done. A different kind of story, but both, it can be very intense. So thank you for pointing that out. So what's first on your list?
In terms of integration, I mean, I think the first thing is to give yourself time and space and not rush back into your life. I see this a lot, and it's understandable because in the modern world, we have very busy lives, very frenetic, very active, and people may do, 2 weeks doing, medicine work in the jungle and lots of ceremonies, and then the day it's over, they fly right home, and then they go to work the next. And that doesn't give the space and the time that's needed for all of these things to be digested. You really need just time, unstructured time where you're not busy, where your mind isn't occupied, to allow things to come up and to move, and to also have time to reflect. So to me, the first thing is really make time, give yourself time. Don't just go back to business as usual, because you're really kind of squandering the experience by doing that. Whereas if you give yourself that space and time, you can learn so much more and gain so much more out of it. And actually your understanding of what happened will shift as well.
Yeah, so well said. And that wasn't on my list, but I'm putting on it right now, because I always say this to people. And in my program, which is a year-long program, I recommend people to take 4 4 weeks off.
Mm.
Minimum 4 weeks. And the reason for that is because, well, the traditional preparation, the dieta, is at least, well, minimum 1, but ideally 2 weeks when you would withdraw from the world. And we are not just talking about the physical diet, the food that you eat, but you are shutting down your senses and withdrawing, not consuming information, not socializing, not being engaged in sexual activity, so on and so forth. So that's already, a time to kind of switch out from this world and prepare for the ceremony, prepare for this rite of passage, for this initiation, that you're going to go through. And, after the experience, what happens is that you're so open, your awareness is so expanded thanks to the medicine, right? And there will be, I call it this window of opportunity, the first 4 to 6 weeks, when this expansion slowly contracts back to, hopefully not back to where you were, but it's not, you're not gonna stay in that state, in that medicine high, in that afterglow that we are talking about specific to the ayahuasca. But in that window, in that space of contraction, you are still in that expansion, and there is a lot of information coming through. And if you go back to your life, and if you go back to 8-hour job and your chores and your family and everything, you're gonna start focusing outside, to deal with your life, and you're not gonna pay attention of what's happening inside of you, of what kind of information is passing through, and you will miss, a huge opportunity to keep receiving, from the medicine, important information that is very significant for you on your journey. So my clients normally come down like minimum a week before the ceremony, and they do stay 3 to 4 weeks after and chill out here on the beach and journal and be in nature and rest a lot. And I always say to them that imagine that it's like an operation. When you go to have a hip replacement, you're not going back to work, the next, morning, the next. So it is like that, but it's an energetic operation. It's a psychic surgery, in a way, but it is nonetheless, it makes a big impact in your system, in your being. So you need that time of recovery, when you are present, and when just start bringing this experience back down on material level. So I would love to know from the listeners, like, what is your experience? If you ever had an experience with the medicine, did you take time off? Was it hard to go back to your life? How was that for you? Please leave a comment for us, because I know what Alex mentioned, that a lot of people, we call it the culture shock, going from the jungle, from a retreat back to your city life or whatever, corporate life, whatever is that you are doing. So I would love to hear from you. And thank you so much, Alex, for for bringing this up. What do you recommend people personally, and what is the ideal time do you think that they shall take off from their busy life, and what kind of activities people can do during?
Well, it really depends on what's possible for the person. Obviously, not everyone can take 4 weeks off afterwards. I think if you can take a few days, at least a week is ideal, if that's possible, and use that time not only to reflect on what happened, but also follow the post-retreat, post-ceremony restrictions, how important those are as part of the integration. So using that time to see what are the things that I removed to prepare for this. Do I want to add back? Sometimes you may not want to add everything back. You may notice that you feel lighter without alcohol or certain substances or certain foods. So one thing is you work with the restrictions and respect them. That's an important foundation for integration. And then 2, you can use that time to consider, okay, how am I feeling now without this? And do I need to add this back? Or if I do, how do I do this in a way where it's kind of gently, and seeing how it feels, and kind of find a balance for me with these substances. And it also could be behaviors, the sexual restriction. A lot of people have compulsive relationships to sex, pornography, masturbation, you name it. And having that break gives you a chance to reevaluate that and see how you feel with a more balanced relationship with those behaviors. So that's definitely one thing, is I think work with the restrictions, not only follow them, but also evaluate your relationship to what has been removed. And I've seen people who really take that, run with it, and they'll go like, I'm going to cut out alcohol and drugs for 6 months. And, this felt really good. It was the first time I've taken a break from these substances, and they cut it out for 6 months, and it's transformative for their life. Transformative. So that is definitely one thing to do. Also, journaling, spending a lot of time writing what's coming up for you and what happened, and sifting through the ceremonies and the experiences and the shifts that happen. Journaling is I just find it to be such a helpful tool, and it's something that leaves you with a gift afterwards, because you can always look back on it. And I know I do this myself occasionally. I'll look back at my journals from, ceremonies long ago, or other kinds of personal work I've done. And it's so amazing actually to see how much I've changed over time and what has shifted. It's very encouraging and validating. So that is a big one for me. Is I always recommend people to journal, keep a journal throughout the entire process, buy one just for the ceremonies, work with it with your intentions beforehand, journal during your experiences with the medicine, and then afterward.
Yes, that's definitely that's on my list. Actually, that's the second. But I just wanted to circle back to what you said, that people shall take minimum, a week after the ceremony, and definitely not go back on Monday to work after a weekend ceremony or something like that. And I think that this is my personal opinion, and I'm sure, like not everybody will agree with that. But I personally think if you can't take a few days off, then you are not serious about your process, about wanting to change and really dedicate yourself and commit yourself to that, then don't do this, like take some mushrooms or something. Like there's so many other ways, because we have this powerful tool, and I feel that this is a little bit of misuse of the medicine when people are not taking it so seriously and not putting their part into the process. And and I would say that if you can't even do that, that maybe you want to think about why are you doing this and how committed you are to change your level. So let me know what you think about it in the comment. And back to the journal, that was number 2 on my list actually, because I really big fan, believer in journaling. I think as you said, it helps people process. It helps that stream of consciousness flowing that we talked about, especially the first while after the ceremony, because you are putting it out. You are not. It's not building up inside of you. You are keep expressing it by writing, so that stream keeps coming. So you can go way deeper when you do this. Number 1. Number 2, it will help people to just exercise and practice mindfulness. And I know that for many people, meditation is very difficult. Most people don't even understand what meditation is, so some kind of other mindfulness than like journaling. I think it's a good start for people who are not so familiar with these practices, and just get into that habit of every day paying attention and checking in with yourself. How am I feeling? What am I thinking about? How is my body feeling? What's going on in my internal landscape, reality, and cultivating this habit and cultivating this relationship with yourself, maintaining awareness, helping you have a sense of detachment. When you write, even when you write about difficult things, it helps you to see it, from a different perspective, in a different way. So oftentimes when people are writing and they are inquiring about something, the answers just come onto the paper because, they are processing it this way. And personally, for me, in my program, I require people to journal. I don't take on people who are not ready to come to this. And people send me their journals one day before the session. And this requires, great trust, from the people to be that vulnerable and that there. But that's why we have, right, the safe container so people can do this. And when I read through people's journals, I see a lot of things that they wouldn't necessarily tell me or they wouldn't necessarily notice, right? Because it's harder to see your story when you are in it. It's much easier to see it from the outside. That's true for everybody. So in my work, for me, it gives so much extra information about the person and what's happening within them than just seeing them for, occasional or regular sessions. And we keep notes of the journals and the sessions, and we are creating kind of like a mind map during this journey. And in the end, people get a PDF, like a visual PDF mostly about their shadow self and how their shadow and their programming particularly for them manifest. And people love that, they just like, oh my God, it's so clear. I can see myself now. I can see these parts of me. So it's much easier to not fall into those patterns, into those behaviors anymore. So I find that to be crucial. I think so much gets unnoticed, especially in people's busy life and, social media, that it's necessary, to do this in order to access deeper information for the people. And it's a great tool for me. And if I'm in doubt or confused about something, I do not journal every day anymore. But if I have something that I'm like mulling over or struggling with, for sure, the first thing I do, okay, let's write this out to have more clarity and more understanding what is really happening. So is there anything you would like to add to the journaling part?
Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up a really good point of how it can also highlight themes that we may not notice, especially, a part of journaling is also looking back on it, right? And so when you look back at what you've written over the last 2 or 3 weeks and read through it or the last month, you start picking up themes that keep coming up and patterns that show up in your writing. And that can be very illuminating. Like you said, things that you may not notice because it's just so embedded in how we think, how we act. But then when we read it, kind of almost third party in a way, you're reading your own material, it gives you fresh eyes and things start popping out and things become more noticeable. That can be really important for your growth and your healing and your integration. And I would include in that also dream journal, because that is another kind of journaling. I also recommend it and think it's so important during, like you said, this expanded state after the afterglow period. People tend to be more in touch with their dreams, also during retreats, during ceremonies, tend to have more vivid dreams, more memorable dreams. And if you're journaling these, writing these down in the morning, include that in your journal, you can actually find that there's a lot of insights and lessons, messages from the medicine, internal guidance that shows up in these dreams. And similarly, when you look back at them, you might notice there are themes within the dreams, repeating symbols, imagery, content that can be really important for your own growth and healing.
So true. Thank you for making this point. Actually, I think that dreams are very significant during the whole process, but especially at the beginning, because we process a lot during dream time when your ego is asleep, so there is not so much resistance in the system. And that's why, a lot of processing can happen in dream time. And I actually had, pretty wide experiences, but one of them was when I had a series of dreams and every day it was continuing. Well, it was the same dream in slightly different way. And for me, it was about being lost. And I had this type of nightmare, not night terror, but nightmare since I was very, very little, that I'm lost somewhere and I do not recognize where I am. And I don't have my keys or my purse, or I have nothing with me. And and I'm just lost, and I'm freaking out. And I'm going to people and asking for help, and people turn away and nobody wants to help me or talk. And then the second night I had the same dream, but in this dream, I find a person who I could talk to who was a junkie, and I remember that in my dream, I was thinking that this is funny that I am lost and he is lost as well in so many ways, and we are trying to guide each other or something, That has actually big meaning for my process. But anyways, and then the third night, I was lost the same way the dream started out. And then this very lovely family helps me. And then we find my bag, and they invite me to their house, and they treat me really nice. And, it was really, really connected to my process it was very meaningful, these dreams, it made a lot of sense to me. And it also showed me how you do process things in your dreams. And as you are processing content that is arising, your dreams can change. And many people told me about similar, that, they had continuous dreams, and then the theme changed at one point. Did you have any experience like that?
Definitely. Dreams evolving as you work through things. Absolutely. I mean, I had my own experience of that with, my relationship with my father, who passed away when I was a child. And in, some ceremonies, he came up in the ceremony and then started showing up in my dreams. And I started connecting and communicating with him, and noticed he looked different as the dreams went on. As kind of healing happened and dialogue happened and forgiveness, acceptance, all these things happened, he shifted in the dream and then eventually left. So that was really, and some of it even bled into real life, where things would happen in these dreams and I would see it the next day. So I'm a big believer that there's a lot of power in dreams, and you can actually do a lot of healing work just with your dream. So it's a great complement to ayahuasca practice. And actually, traditionally, dreams are huge in shamanic training and apprenticeship, not just in the Amazon with ayahuasca shamanism, but around the world, and in many different traditions, from Greco-Roman to African to different indigenous traditions in Asia and the Americas, and of course in Buddhism, dream yoga. I mean, dreams, Australian Aborigine practices. Dreams are supremely important in many different traditions, but within the Amazonian tradition, my teacher would always say, when I'd come to him and share, I had all these, I'd have a lot of cats show up in my dreams, and he'd be like, yeah, that's the spirits. They're testing you. They show up in your dreams while you're on a diet, while you're doing a shamanic diet, and they communicate with you and they teach with you in the dreams. And that's a big part of the Amazonian tradition. So it's kind of a perfect complement to ceremony.
I totally agree. And it's Tibetan dream yoga, I think, is 5,000-year-old practice. So definitely not invented today. And if you're feeling, called to this, then you can go way deeper into lucid dreaming and dream work, and a lot of good stuff that I'm interested in is definitely on my to-do list. Tell us if you ever had, crazy dreams in your ayahuasca integration, or, any processing that happened. Share with us in the comments. My next one on my list is nature, especially for people who come from city environment and go back to a city and were on a retreat or were on a ceremony or something, or even if they were just out in nature for the ceremony and just go back to the city. I think that can be very overwhelming for many people. And I think one of the good way when you feel overwhelmed is just go to nature, just go to a park, sit beside the tree, put your back to the tree, close your eyes, breathe. So also on my list, but nature has a very harmonious vibration and frequency. So when you are in especially raw nature, but any kind of nature would be pretty good, then you are in an environment that is a harmonious, pretty high vibe environment, versus if you're in an office where people are, agitated or stressed or whatever, then you are in an environment that is quite low vibe, disharmonious, so it will be way more overwhelming for you. So just simply, if you're struggling, if you're feeling overwhelmed, I'm fine, just find nature close to you and go sit in nature and just relax, or whatever takes your fancy, just spend some time there, because I think the Mother Earth, of course, the biggest healer. What do you think?
100%. It's also on my integration list personally for my own work and what I recommend to clients, and even just in my therapy practice. I often recommend go just spend time in nature, get out of the human world. The human world is so full of dysfunction, right? And for a long time, the media, the internet, all the stuff going on in the world right now that is friction is in the human realm. But when you go into nature, you experience something very different, and that harmony, that balance, that grounding. We're very much, I think, evolved to feel at ease and at peace there on a very basic level, because that's our original home. The homes that we live in now are relatively recent inventions. So I find it to be really helpful anytime, like you said, you're overwhelmed, you're stressed. I certainly do myself. If I actually, if I don't go to nature regularly, I feel off. And it's become a very important part of my own just self-care practice. So if you don't have, I'm lucky. I live in Northern California, and there's nature everywhere. I can go to a forest, 10 minutes away. But if you don't have that, what is a great option is any kind of body of water. So a river, even if it's a river near a city, a lake, a pond, the beach, the ocean, because you're immediately connecting to this rawness of the water element. It's an important part of the natural world. And yeah, like you said, a park, a tree, just spending time with the tree. But nature is very healing for us, and it helps clear our mind. It helps to calm our nervous system. And it's often what we're feeling, I think, is an existential pain of not having enough nature exposure. I think it's subtle, and we don't realize it always, but there is a pain there of that disconnect, that we've broken away from nature, and there's parts of us that really miss it and that need it.
Definitely. And just for, just a little interest fact, most of the people that I worked with, like I would say like 90% of them moved location after their journey experience, and people who lived in a city moved out of a city. I really noticed that people who work with this particular medicine, the Mother Ayahuasca, that this connection to the earth is getting restored, and you kind of, as you said, you cannot live without it. It's get taxing on you, and you have to, you don't feel good anymore in a city. You feel very depleted, very frazzled, overwhelmed, all that, and I find this also very interesting as people heal and recover this connection to nature, that they move toward nature. It's beautiful to see.
That's certainly been my case as well.
Yeah, right.
Lifelong city boy, but after working with ayahuasca and going down this medicine path, it became just too noisy, too frazzled, as you said. Like the energy, I could feel it and sense it. It affected me a lot more. I think we become more sensitive, and then nature feels much more, or being more open space, more green, more trees, more nature, just feels more comfortable and feels more at ease. And you can breathe again.
Definitely. I also grew up in the capital city of Hungary, in Budapest, 26 years. And then I lived in Ireland, in a beach town. It's a smaller town. And now I live in a tiny village in Mexico on the beach. So I'm like withdrawing from that time. And I really don't like to go into a big city anymore. And before I didn't have that problem. So I can certainly testify. Another thing that I put on my list and wanted to kind of highlight a little bit is breath work and breathing. It's a big part of my work to teach people to breathe a little bit, not, big course or anything, but when I prepare them for the ceremony, I teach them certain techniques to breathe, in the ceremony when they are in intensity or when they struggle with something. And also in the integration, breath work is our main tool for emotional release. What I use to teach people how to use their breath to navigate when they are emotionally overwhelmed. And this not just, I'm referring to like a panic attack or anxiety attack and how to prevent that or to calm your nervous system down, but also, handling anger, grief, any kind of intense emotion that people can be flooded emotionally in the integration when they empty and release a lot of suppressed emotions that they carried for a long time. And this can be scary because you suppress emotions that you don't want to feel. So obviously you're not comfortable feeling them, or you feel that you are not equipped, to feel them. And so it can be intense for people, these emotional waves, washing over. I call it the emotional roller coaster. And when people are emotionally overwhelmed, automatically people stop breathing and they just like hold their breath, and that just makes everything worse. So just simple breathing techniques, which is, long deep breath through an open mouth, count this many or whatever. So just simple breathing techniques and pranayama to help people to get back the agency over their body and their nervous system, especially when they are emotionally overwhelmed, and beyond the breath, use movement and sound as well. So a little bit of somatic experiencing, or maybe even, sometimes you need to let the scream out or something, obviously in the proper environment. So I find that these tools help people to actually process, what is arising. And when this happens, is it, you return into equilibrium and balance, right? If you are in the overwhelm and you don't know what to do, and you are just you stuck there, like it's worse. Like now you are there, you're holding on into the discomfort. So these tools like the breath, like simple movements, simple somatic movements, and sound, and giving sound, or any kind of sound, is really, I think, useful for people. And this is something that they learn, these little tools, and then they can use in their everyday life when they can assess, okay, this is a situation, I know what to do, I have tools, and I can use this. I think breath is so powerful, and I know that I'm biased because that was one of my basic training was in rebirthing and different types of breath work. But I think in all yogic traditions, like many traditions, talk about the importance of the breath. The breath is one of the shortest way to influence your nervous system. When we are working with trauma, we are working with nervous system that is in a fight flight, and triggered, you go into the fight and flight all the time. Breathing is one of the best way to affect and calm down your nervous system and take back, the power over what's happening to you and how to navigate that. So I always, teach that in the integration to the people, these different techniques that they use. And I had many people who had regular panic attacks, and just with a couple of steps of breathe this way, orient in the space, affirm that this is a false alarm, and so on and so forth, they could completely take back the power and stop the panic attacks, and eventually not even have any more panic attacks with no pills, no nothing. And you have a panic attack because you are holding so much fear that you cannot hold anymore, and it comes out, and that's why you have a panic attack. So we need to find ways to release the fear, panic attack. So, and that's kind of deeper work that we are doing, the integration, definitely facing some fears and releasing some fears. But what do you think about these tools, and how do you use them in your?
Well, once again, I agree 100%. I also work a lot with breathing. It's the I would say the number one tool I teach people before, when I'm orienting to a ceremony that we're doing, orienting people. It's, I always go over what are the tools you can use during the ceremony. That's the number one, because exactly as you said, it's the most direct way that we can actually consciously influence our nervous system and our physiology. And so, slow, deep, rhythmic breathing is it creates a relaxation response. Whereas when we are in panic mode, we contract, right? And we freeze, exactly as you said, and that energy gets trapped and we actually get stuck with this fear response. And so breathing is a huge part of, in my own practice, I also work with breathing with my clients a lot, because it's so helpful. And there's so many different types of breath work. So you can use breathing to relax and to calm. You can also use it, like you said, to move emotions. And you can use it to access deeper places, by, more like forceful, intense breathing, rhythmic breathing that's faster paced but conscious. You can actually access deeper parts of yourself and stored emotions for release. So it's a great tool set and very versatile. It's can be used in so many different ways, and there's so many different types of breath work. And so I also recommend people just explore and just learn, try different breath works and see, what works for you. There's yogic breath, right? There's pranayama. There's holotropic breath work. There's more relaxation-oriented breathing, meditation. Often there's, probably the most common meditation form is focusing on the breath and observing the breath. So, the breath is fundamental. So interesting to hear the parallels and what our top integration practices are.
Well, I think that just shows that we are, like professional people, and we know what we are doing, because it's really not, brain science, in that way that I think that all path leads there, right? Mm-hmm. And if we would have completely different lists, that would mean that one of us is really like on the path, no, like one of us is lost. So I think it's awesome, and I find this often with people who actually work in integration, that we come to the same conclusion through our work experience, through work with the medicine. And of course, there is one truth, so to say, at the end of the day. And if you are walking this path good way with the heart, then you're gonna get to the same place, than the other people who also walk this something I wanted to say about that. What else is on your list?
A big one to me, it's almost the most important one. It's like all of the other roads lead to this, which is take action, make some kind of practical behavioral change in your life. And that could be letting go of an old behavior that's not serving you anymore. That could be learning a new tool or a new skill or a new strategy. It could be taking an insight from the ceremony or a message and putting that into practice. Maybe that is seeing a therapist, right? Or getting integration support. If it said, which I have a lot of clients that come to me because they got messages in ceremony that said, you need to work on this trauma that you haven't been dealing with. So taking action there would be like getting help with that. But do something. That's what the reflection and the processing is, to help you get to a point where you do something about it, because it's the action, the physical changes, the behaviors you do that actually lead to the change in the long-term transformation in your life. So to me, so I always ask anybody, if they're asking, okay, how do I integrate? I always just say, just find one thing you can do to put what you experience into practice. And that could be, wow, the ceremonies were amazing to connect with people so deeply and share all these personal things. I never do that in my life. I've never had a space where I can talk about, my pain or what meaning of life or purpose or things that are deeper or spiritual. Well, if that really stuck with you, then put that into practice. Join communities that are more meaningful and are more purpose-driven, or try to deepen the relationships in your life that with people who are open to that. So find a way to translate something that you experienced into a behavioral change or a physical practice in some. And I follow this myself. If I'm ever doing my own personal ceremonies to work on something, or I go to ayahuasca and say, hey, what's going on? I got something's coming up for me, give me some guidance, please. Whatever messages I get, I will ask, okay, how do I put this into practice in my day-to-day life? And then that's my homework, is putting that into practice. And the times that I do, it's tremendously helpful. I feel much better. My life goes much better. The times where I haven't, then I'm kind of still in the same stuckness, and I come back later and I get the same message, and I get the scolding from ayahuasca, and then it's like, okay, you didn't do your homework, so do the work.
Yes, I mean, this is what integration is. Put into practice what you learned, embody, weave it into your everyday life, into your behavior. Otherwise, we are talking about some intellectual masturbation or something. I don't know. Right. And that's why I always say to people that it has to happen. Change. If your life didn't change, if your relationships didn't change, if you're still the job that you hate, still in the toxic relationship and stuff, then you're not in the right track. Then you go and get a therapist, you go get help with the integration. So yeah, leave us a comment if you're struggling, if you feel that you're circling and you're going to ceremony and then no real change is happening in your life, because then you're stuck somewhere. And the best is, as Alex said, to get help and to get unstuck, and that's why I think my program is so successful, because that 1 year, it's a long time, and I bring people through all this that we were just talking about. And actually the last one on my list was asking the right questions. That's also something that I think it's a valuable skill during the journey, but also in your life in general, because our culture is so much about who knows better. I know better. No, I know better. I know more, and it's really, I find through working with the medicine that she taught me a lot. Ask the good questions. That's where the magic is. The answers are there. Everything is there, but how to ask for the source of your healing, how to ask for the source of your liberation, how to ask the question, and to have this reflective, how do I put this into practice, right? What can I learn from this experience, instead of why is this happening to me, right? So asking the right questions can lead you to the source of the problem, and we do that a lot in the integration. Gabor Mate calls it compassionate inquiry. I just call it asking the right questions to get people in that mode that if you don't know something, just inquire, ask questions, and a part of you knows, and the answer will arise, and this is also so empowering for people. This is very much connected, taking agency back and taking their power back and following their internal guidance, and connecting with that voice within that comes from a higher place, the higher self, and not from the shadow aspect, so to say. So I think it's very important that we ask the right questions, and we get into this mindset that instead of searching for the answers, we just ask the questions, and we present, we listen to what is arising, because it's there, and also obviously it implies an element of trust. And I teach people how to do this, because many people don't know how to do this at the beginning, because our society doesn't promote, but it's very, very valuable skill. And I think it for me, what it connects to big time is the belief systems and the core beliefs. And the beliefs are the software that create the behavior, because you're gonna act upon what you believe, right? That your behavior will be catalyzed by your belief system. So by this type of inquiry, we can dig down to core beliefs that are upholding core belief systems that are false or limiting or very disempowering for you. And once you change that belief or belief system or software, the behavior actually automatically changes, because the beliefs determines the behavior. So there are times I notice in the integration when people know what they should do, they have the awareness, but they stuck, they cannot do it. They know they want to do it, but they cannot do it. And oftentimes what I find that in these cases, there is an unconscious belief that is blocking it to happen. So for example, somebody wants to advocate for yourself and speak up, and now this person has a lot of strategies and understanding why is this important and how to do it, have a step-by-step action plan or whatever. When it comes to putting it into practice, this person just freeze, cannot cue any of that. That can be caused by a belief that is saying that, good girls keep quiet or something like that, that is totally unconscious, that you don't know you have, and that kicks in when you are in that situation, trigger for you. So that's another reason why you sometimes need help with this, to uproot these things, and then to have this type of inquiry and questioning, so you can go inside and see what motivates, behaviors that you would like to let go of, but you're struggling.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I would add to that belief is often, that's learned, right? We're not born with any beliefs. We are molded and shaped by our environment, our parents, our families, our school, our peers. So beliefs, like you just described, that are limiting us and trapping us, and not, that's keeping us from taking action that actually fits with who we are as adults. Often that belief is attached to a formative experience or something that happened, or it could be something that was observed, like I saw my parents act this way, and then I developed a belief that that's what love looks like, right? That could be just more observational over time, because we mimic, that's part of how we learn, as mimicry. But it could be also like a traumatic experience that taught me it's not safe for me to speak up. And so part of that inquiry then leads you to, oh, well, there's a trauma here that needs to be healed so that I can change this belief and evolve it to the new adult perspective and understanding that it is safe for me to speak up and it's important for me to speak up. So I definitely agree with that. I think inquiry is a very powerful process. It's the root of therapy and is inquiry, but also it's a root of Eastern meditative contemplative practices. What is the nature of self? Where is this coming from? Where is this attachment or this aversion rooted? These are all inquiry questions. So it's a big part of Buddhist contemplative practice. And I also, I kind of do the same thing that you're describing, is something that is a challenge will just ask the question and leave the space for the answer to arise without going to left brain analytic problem solving. Allow space, and the answer will come up could come up in a dream, it could come up in journaling, it could come up during a meditation, but it's a very powerful practice when you just start asking, and then you allow the answer to arise on its own. And especially when you're working with plant medicines and ayahuasca medicine spirits, they are assisting that process too. So it does, I agree, it takes some trust that, okay, the answer will come, ayahuasca is still supporting me, but it does. You just have to kind of learn how to listen. Really, more than anything, it's kind of like, how do I shut off the mind so I can make space and listen? That's a really important, I think, lesson.
Yes, so much so. And this is so exciting. Thank you for sharing that. We're gonna start wrapping it up for today. So let us know if these techniques, if these practices are helpful for you, if you have experience with any of that, if you have a practice that you really love, but we didn't talk about it, share with us in the comments, and we can hopefully explore that too. And tell us how ayahuasca changed your life, because as we said, that why we are doing it is to create change, some kind of positive change in our life. So if you work with this medicine, how did it change your life? We would love to hear about that. And if it didn't change your life and you're working with this medicine, then connect with Alex or myself for some personal support. And we would love to hear from you. Before we wrap up, Alex, is there anything that you would like to add?
The only other thing I would say is, commune, connect with people. Don't do this alone. Don't be alone in your process. This is very personal and very emotional, very intimate work. And make sure that you are connecting with somebody, whether it's people in your life who can, handle this, and it's safe to talk to about this. People from the ceremony that you connected to, an integration circle, but get community around your process. So it's not just you. And that's really helpful because it can be very isolating to be doing this deep personal work. Even if you have a individual guide or counselor, it still can be a very isolating experience. So get community, get support around this beyond the self.
So true. Actually, that should be on our list. The community, I think, especially in psychedelic healing, that's needed, because there's still a lot of stigma and suspicion and, just misinformation around what's happening. So people can feel isolated or sometimes judged or attacked even. And it's good to have our tribe, and our community to support us on this journey. And we're going to come back next time with the traps and pitfalls, which will be, I think, also very exciting episode. So stay tuned. Hopefully we can do it in September, because we didn't have time to go into that today, but I think it was important that we highlight all these things, and I'm really trusting that people will benefit from this episode a lot, and if you're in this pattern, and if you want to hear about some other topic, also leave a comment for us. So Alex, is there anything that you are offering or you are up to that you would like to share with people right
now? Aside from my private practice doing ayahuasca integration, there's also, I'm working with a retreat center in Costa Rica called Reunion, and we're kicking off a series of retreats specifically for LGBTQIA communities. So there's one happening at the end of the very end of October is the first one. And I'm going to be facilitating ceremonies there. There's a lot of workshops around healing related specifically to our LGBTQ communities. So I'm excited about that. And there's going to be several happening next year as well at Reunion Experiences. It's the name of the retreat center.
That's so cool. So yeah, if you are part of that community, I think definitely check this out. And if you resonated with what Alex was sharing, connect with him. We're going to share his website, but you can share it now. What's your website, Alex?
It's transcendentcouncil.com.
Right, transcendentcouncil.com, but we're going to share it in the description as well. And if you are interested in my program, Ayahuasca Assisted Therapy, that is a year-long deep dive. One of my clients said it's like an archaeological dig of your soul, and I like that. And you want to create, deep transformation, then please feel free to connect with me. And we are so excited to launch our first Ayahuasca Assisted Therapy facilitator training, which is basically ayahuasca integration training. So this is training for people who want to support others in their integration, like myself or Alex. And this training is specifically focused on ayahuasca, and the only training actually that focused on this medicine. And I'm going to teach this framework that I've been using for the last 7 years in my practice with just amazing success. So yeah, check that out on my website. And if you want to hear about that, please get in touch with me. And we have some offerings and calls and materials that we can share with you. And this is happening next April. We are starting. So it's only 12 people. It's going to be invitation only. So very special little group of Wayshores. We are calling in all of you who are listening to this and feeling the call. And I think, that this is going to fill such a gap in the psychedelic healing market, because there's so much places opening and ceremonies and retreat centers and people serving the medicine. There is really great offerings, and I think there's very few people like ourselves who specifically focus on plant medicine integration, in our case ayahuasca integration. And believe it or not, the first #1 most googled keyword on Google is ayahuasca. So from all the psychedelics, so there is a huge amount of people who are interested and who already, worked with the medicine, and just hearing about, oh, there is such things like integration. That's how it started with me. So yeah, get in touch if you're interested in that, and just happy to have you. Leave a comment, share the episode, and subscribe channel. And I hope see you for the next episode, when we're going to share about the traps and pitfalls of the ayahuasca integration process. So I'm sure it's going to be exciting. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
Thank you for listening, and leave a comment if you enjoyed this episode. Help us grow our community by sharing this episode with your friends and subscribe to our channel to receive the latest on ayahuasca-assisted therapy. To embark on your healing journey or to start a new career in psychedelic assisted therapy, go to my website, avatarhealingarts.com, and get in touch. And of course, stay tuned for the next episode.